Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Kengan Omega Chapter 144. I say review in air quotes because this is also going to be kind of a discussion. I'll probably have that in the title of the video. Because this video is not so much going to be me going over information that was revealed in the chapter and sort of doing deep analysis of it and stuff like that. I mean, that's going to be stuff that I do, but it's not really the main focus of the video. This week's chapter was very controversial, and I am going to be going over the 2 points of view you could have on chapter 144 and kind of where I fall into that, because I know a lot of people are very angry. You could tell from looking in my comments or basically anywhere where people are discussing the chapter, but I was not really sure how I felt about it after I finished the chapter, and I still don't have like a very strong opinion on it. I think I've kind of come to a conclusion on it, and I'm going to give that as well at the end of this video after I go over the two sort of arguments for and against this week's chapter. Now, before I get into that, of course, as always, if you haven't already, definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. Help us reach our goal for 2021 of hitting 5... Wait, this isn't 2021 anymore. Of 2022. This is what happens when you say the same shit for like 6 months. Our subscriber goal for 2022, hitting 5,000 subscribers. I want to see how many subscribers we can gain just today off of these two Kengan videos. And to avoid messing up the flow of this video, I'm going to give a shout out to my wonderful patrons right now. Special thanks to Neo, Tyrese Simmons, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, K-God, Chris Redfield, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, Wave of Manga, Chuck's Feed and Seed, Jakester Easy, and Play Free Labs. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it, and if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, or access to reviews for One Piece and The Boxer, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. With that out of the way, let's get on to the review. Now, I think the most common opinion you're going to hear about this week's chapter is that it sucks. I mean, if you look in the comments of my reaction, which you should check out if you haven't already, or you go on my Discord, or you go on other people's Discords, or you go on the subreddits, or you go into other people's comments, or you go on Twitter, whatever, you go anywhere where people are discussing Kengan at the moment, you're going to see they're not very happy about this week's chapter. And the primary reason for that is not just because Eddie might have died, but because Eddie might have died after Ryan suddenly seemed to become way stronger than he already was previously in the fight when he was getting fucking curb stomped by Eddie. 100% removal Ryan was just getting smacked around like a toddler by Eddie, who was in base form, not even using any kind of techniques or anything. And now Eddie, who's in 100% Goihun, which we were previously shown, makes him fast and strong enough to fucking speed blitz Aereo, Ryan, and Wu Jing all within like under a second and effectively knock all three of them out. Now suddenly, Ryan is able to resist a barrage of strikes using the Wu Clan's ultimate technique long enough, and really without having much issue, to eventually stick his finger in the wound in Eddie's neck and then maybe cut his fucking head off or something. I don't think his head got cut off. I think it was just, Ryan cut him open pretty deep. And this seems to be another case of Sandrovich setting up an antagonist, establishing them as being very, very powerful, and then having them lose or die in their first fight. So then we're not really going to be seeing much of any of them after the fact. They leave a pretty piss-poor first impression for someone that's supposed to be really powerful. They end up losing to the already established characters. So what's the point of introducing them? They're not really going to shake anything up. Usually when you introduce a very powerful new character, You want them to beat the established characters to sort of shake up the order of everything. It's like, oh fuck, this guy's really powerful. Maybe our protagonists will have to, I don't know, try and get stronger or something. But apparently all the protagonists are already so fucking awesome and strong and cool that they don't have to do any of that. They're already good enough to beat all of the villains the first time they fight them. And it's not good. It's kind of boring. It's pretty disappointing. I don't consider it to be particularly great writing. It feels like Sandrovich kind of blows his load way too early with all of this stuff. It's not very good, and I definitely understand why a lot of people are really, really fucking pissed off. On the other hand, this fight with Eddie has lasted several chapters now. It's been, what, like 4 or 5? And it was Eddie, primarily Eddie, fighting Ryan, Aereo, Wu Jing, and then 2 other Kureis, Hollis and I'm forgetting his name, but those 2 other guys are also somewhat formidable Kurei clan members. Definitely 2 of the better ones, I think. I'm pretty sure they're basically only below Ryan and Aereo, who are the 2 most powerful members of the clan. And he was kind of fucking curb stomping them. He was kind of beating the ever-loving shit out of them. Oh, I've mentioned it just a few minutes ago. I've brought it up several times. 100% Goihun, speed blitzing motherfuckers. Absolutely fucking trouncing them. Do you understand how much shit it took for them to take down Eddie if he's really dead? It took Ryan, who's one of the strongest characters in the series, going 100%. Aereo, who used to be one of the strongest characters and is still a force to be reckoned with even in his old age. Wu Jing, who is the head of a respective clan, and 2 of the other more powerful Kurei clan members. In addition to that, it took a lot of strategy and tactics from a masterclass assassin, and Aereo sacrificing himself in order to create an opening in which Eddie could be weakened enough that Ryan could then use the now created weak point in Eddie to deal a fatal blow. It took a whole hell of a lot for multiple characters, multiple of whom were very strong, to pull through and finally beat Eddie. It's not the problem that I had with the Alan fight, in which Alan was hyped up as being very strong, did nothing to Ryan, and then died immediately. There was no actual fight there. Alan didn't fucking do anything. I don't know where to put Alan on the, power rankings, because he had, no feats. He didn't fucking do anything. Eddie did a lot. Boy, did he do a lot. And it took a lot of people doing a lot as well to maybe kill him, at the very least, severely injure him. So, Eddie's not a jobber. It took a ridiculous amount of shit to finally maybe take the guy down. So what's my opinion on all of this? It's a bit of a mixture of the 2. I agree that Eddie is not a jobber. He is disgustingly powerful. He feels disgustingly powerful. It's like Faye. Faye wasn't a jobber. Faye lived up to the hype for me. The fact that he died as soon as he did was kind of disappointing. And if the case is the same here for Eddie, I think it's fairly disappointing as well. But his performance was nothing short of exceptionally impressive, and the loss of a character like Aereo, for the sake of taking him down, is pretty significant. I mean, Aereo's been around since very early on in the series, and is one of the more significant characters within the Kengan universe. I mean, he's the first Fang of Metsudo. He's the guy who made Metsudo the Kengan Association chairman. So, I think that's a decent loss to have in this fight with Eddie. But I still have issues with it. I don't like that Eddie was defeated this quickly. This final page which still had really good art. This chapter had really good art, like, just in general. There were a lot of really, really good panels in this chapter. This final page, I think, would not be controversial in the slightest if we got it 100 chapters later. After Ryan got beaten by Edward, Edward got away from the Purgatory Arena, defeated the Kure and Woos, Aeryo still died, Ryan has some kind of training to become stronger, to eventually defeat Edward. And then this is what we get after a very difficult fight between the two of them. Because, I mean, Edward is basically like a perfected, evolved version of Ryan. He is a foil to him, I guess. He is a goal for him to eventually reach. So the idea would have been that Ryan would be trying to get stronger so that he can defeat Edward on his own. And we didn't get that. At least it doesn't seem like we're getting that. And that opportunity is not going to exist anymore, because even though we've been building up to Edward for a long time, we're getting rid of him already, maybe, and it feels very premature. That's kind of the issue I have with what Sandrovich does with a lot of villains, is he sets them up for like a really, really fucking long time, and then the first time they do pretty much anything is the last time they do anything, because they either die or they get beaten and become irrelevant. They just slip out of reality like Yumi and Lu Tian and Lo Long. Like, they don't exist anymore. Even though they were very powerful and were kind of hyped up as being very powerful, important villains. Not so much Lu Tian, but Yumi Gahama was set up for a while. Lo Long was set up for the whole fucking tournament. They lose their first fights. They're left looking in a pretty embarrassing condition, and then we just never bring them up again. If the same is happening with Eddie, that's not good. That's a really bad track record for your antagonists. You want to have intimidating, long-term antagonists. I don't think Tiger Nico is going to lose. Does this sound like fucking battered wife syndrome? We keep saying this like every single time when a new powerful antagonist shows up. Well, I don't think they're going to lose, and then they do. Or they die. But Tiger Nico, like, I literally just cannot fucking mentally conceive it. Because if Eddie and Tiger Nico are about equals, and Ryan and Oma are about equals, Ryan was not able to solo Eddie. So Oma sure as shit isn't. Muteba being there is like fucking negligible, as we saw from him getting off-screened by Tiger Nico. Zero difficulty as far as we can tell, depending on what happened there. So, my overall verdict on this. The chapter overall is actually a pretty good chapter. It's just the ending is kind of narratively unsatisfying. It's narratively unsatisfying. Sandrovich is concluding his usage of various characters who were set up for a while, who are entertaining, and who the fans like quite a lot, way too early. He's doing it way too prematurely. He is not leaving enough time for the villains to leave a real impact on the story at large. Now, maybe Eddie's fine. Well, not fine, his fucking neck's cut open, but maybe he lives, he gets away, Tiger Nico intervenes, Aeryo dies for nothing, pretty much. I think that would play more so into the tragedy than Aeryo dying, but Eddie still dies, is Aeryo effectively dies for nothing. Eddie's taken off the board for a bit. Fifth Wu Hei presumably takes over operations with the Westward faction for a time. You can be arguing that, oh, Eddie's actually just setting up the fifth Wu Hei, just like how Zhiji was really just setting up Yan, and how Fei was just setting up Tiger Nico, which is too many red herrings for me. You can have like 1 or 2 red herrings throughout the entire story, and that's neat. Once every previously established villain becomes a red herring, that's when it becomes a fucking problem. Now, once again, we will not really be able to make a final verdict until we see what happens next week. We find out whether or not Eddie's really dead. Did his head get cut off, like, entirely, or is that really just sort of motion lines? And he's severely wounded, but he's gonna get away, maybe? what's going on with Tiger Nico? Is Oma really getting brought here to Eddie, or is Muteba being paid by Tiger Nico to bring Oma to him? Who knows? What is the tragedy going to be? I feel like the tragedy is probably going to be Oma gets kidnapped and probably like all of the CEOs die. That feels on a grand enough scale, and a decent number of the CEOs are fairly popular characters, so the fans would give a shit. When you set up a tragedy happening, it has to be something that the readers would also find to be tragic. So I think that probably makes the most sense to be what happens. But once again, we'll just have to see how this all plays out. This is seemingly one of the most controversial Kengan chapters ever, and I've noticed all of my videos on the, well no, I'd say 2 out of 3 chapters that I've made videos on that were very controversial had Ryan making a silly, goofy face in the thumbnail. Though Ryan's faces in this chapter were much better than during the Allen fight. There were actually really, really good Ryan faces in this chapter, at the very least. So, with that, that's all I've got to say for this week's review and discussion. This one was more of a special case because I didn't have much to say about the chapter itself. I more so wanted to talk about and address the discourse surrounding this chapter because I figured that was a lot more interesting and something I could probably actually make a decent video talking about. So hopefully it was, hopefully you enjoyed, and if you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Kengan Omega chapter reactions and reviews every week that we get a new chapter. If you enjoy discussing Kengan Omega with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.